Cop ar line. So good afternoon and a very warm welcome to our first All Wales Challenge Behaviour Community of Practice meeting online. We've not organised the COP before, just because we were very aware that many of you as practitioners were very busy coping with a lot of COVID related issues, at grassroots level. What we tried to do was work with COP members, worked with their local organisations. I've heard some really good reports about that. And we worked with some national ones like Build to make guidance about COVID and other issues affecting quality of life of people with learning disabilities more widely available. I hope you found some of them useful. If you just Google PBS Build, you'll find a lot of them there. But do contact us afterwards if you have difficulty with that. We've practiced earlier and we hope it all goes okay, but please bear with us because we can't control some things like local bandwidths, and there has been some issues with VPN connections to the Welsh NHS system today, but it seems to be working fine now. So just beware of the etiquette slide that you can see in front of you. So it's good to keep the mic muted when you're not talking, but you're welcome to keep your camera on. We might tell you to turn them off should we have problems with bandwidth, but just do what you're most comfortable with. It's hard to concentrate even for 2.5 hours online, so please take care of yourself. It's fine to have a little break from us, don't worry about that. As David was saying to some people earlier, use the chat box to let us know, to give us feedback, to raise issues, particularly raise any questions you want to ask of presenters or colleagues. A good thing to do just now is just introduce yourself to others. If you see the chat box, it's at the bottom of your screen, and it's called chat. So that's even clear to me. If you open that now, you'll see some people, thanks to those who have already started introducing themselves. So just use that. This is different to Teams, this is Zoom. So the reactions box allows you to clap or raise the thumbs up. But if you want to say something, by all means use that, but use chat as well, just so we can be clear. Doesn't work quite the same as Teams, which I know some of you are used to. I just wish we were all together face to face, but I wish in vain. With the current restrictions, we can't do that. But if the restrictions continue, which seem likely, unfortunately, this will just be the first in a series of online COP meetings. So please tell us what you would like discussed, what you would like on agendas for the future ones. We will return to our usual practice in future meetings of just sharing good practice, really. And so we'd invite anybody out there who's got some good practice that they would think is useful for other COP members. Please get in touch, and we can organise presentations from members for the next meeting, really. We're going to have some feedback, local update time today, so we'll cover a bit of that, yeah. We're going to do that because that format has been so successful. It's how the COP works, really. It's not a very complicated idea, but it has been very successful. So basic rules are everybody's welcome. There's no such thing as a stupid question. We share good practice at many levels, from grassroots levels, from you, and from government as well. So we're really pleased that Hazel Powell is going to join us immediately after this little introductions. We basically want to support you to achieve our common aim of improving quality of life with people who are at risk of using behaviour as a challenge to get their needs met. So that's a big agenda, still lots of work to do. But because that's our aim, that's why we talk about the PBS, Positive Behavioural Support Framework, quite a lot. But we talk about other things too. We are an expert reference group for Welsh Government. Many of you are very familiar with this talk. I'm sorry to have to repeat it again, but we always welcome new members. And we hopefully perhaps we can have more members joining online. Because I was just talking to Linda, who finds it difficult to attend the face-to-face meetings. So there's some benefits in online, but I'd love to have a cup of coffee and a chat with most of you, as I usually do, and that's one of the things we can't do. You have inspired the establishment of 10 other COPs across the UK. We are the oldest one, but 10 other COPs with very similar aims, but do things differently, are now established. And we're particularly pleased about the North Wales active support community of practice too. I'm retiring from Swansea Bay Health Board, as many of you will have heard with a notice, but I'm not retiring from work or PBS. So I'll chair the UK PBS Alliance network of community of practices. So I'll still be involved. Sorry, but you don't get rid of me that easily. But we'll talk more about that at the end of the meeting. Now I think it's time we just went through the agenda, really. I should say, if difficult issues arise for you, which they sometimes do when we're talking about these subjects, then please take care of yourself, step outside the room, let us know if you need any help, really. So, so if we get the, we can do a virtual hello, this is our agenda, then we'll have a policy update from Hazel, so I'm delighted that we're having that. Then we'll have a very brief update from the Learning Disability Improving Lives team. And then we're going to do a little bit of work with you. We'd like you to tell us a few things about your experiences of what it's been like during this COVID period. And then we're going to have some brief updates from you as members. So if you've got things you want to say, then please have a little think what you want to say. We'll need to keep it brief, and then we'll finish with a little announcement at the end. So I think as long as Hazel's ready, I'm sorry Hazel, I can't see you.
That's okay.
I'll just hand over to Hazel now, and I'll ask Hazel to introduce herself and explain her role too. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Edwin, and thanks everybody. Really delighted to be able to join you today. And for me, the COP online is probably easier to get engaged with. So it would be nice to be there in person and see you all, but I do appreciate that sometimes it's easier to engage virtually. So delighted to be able to be with you today. I'm Hazel Powell. I'm Nursing Officer for Mental Health and Learning Disability at Welsh Government. And I've got a bit of a policy update to be able to give you today, and then happy to have a bit of a discussion or take any questions if that's helpful. So, and I know many of you will know the background around Improving Lives, so just very briefly, the Improving Lives programme was launched in June 2018 and is set to run until the 31st of March 2021. The programme has 24 actions across health, social care, housing, early years and transport, and I suppose the key aims of most of those actions are really around reducing health inequalities, increasing community integration, and improving planning and funding systems, in particular between health, housing and social services. And I think it's fair to say good progress was being made on the delivery of the actions within the strategy until the arrival of COVID-19. So like many things, the Improving Lives programme was paused on the 20th of March and work had to be prioritised to manage the COVID response. However, we have managed to get agreement. We're delighted that we've managed to get agreement to restart the programme, and we got that from the Minister of Health and Social Services and the Deputy Minister on the 1st of October. So we're now beginning to take this forward with internal and external stakeholders. However, in light of the ongoing kind of COVID situation, the ministers have asked that we focus on those actions that will address the most critical concerns around health inequalities, around premature deaths, and also around some of the quality of life and isolation issues that are coming particularly with COVID. So it is worth saying that although the programme was paused, we did continue to work on COVID-related priorities. And that did include working across the UK really to share information and review some of the data on mortality, particularly related to COVID, to look at policy changes such as most of you will know people with learning disabilities are now included as eligible for the flu vaccination, and we're also doing some work around the pneumococcal vaccination. And we've continued, really importantly, to meet with the learning disability nurse group and the third sector stakeholders to understand the issues facing people And we've done a lot of work through Improvement Cymru around making sure information was easy, read and accessible for people and their families. However, no doubt restarting the programme gives us more scope to really ensure, I suppose, that we continue to support people with learning disabilities and their families to live as well as possible in the current and ongoing pandemic situation. So we've identified several key areas where stakeholders feel the most acute issues exist and where the greatest impact can be achieved in the current circumstances. And broadly speaking, these are around taking forward the health actions linked to the health board recovery plans. And I know, speaking to the converted here, and the long recognition that people with learning disabilities are often subject to more health inequalities in the wider population, more vulnerable to preventable illnesses than the general population. And we do know that quite often there's a high prevalence of respiratory disorders, high incidence of obesity and diabetes, that really means that people with learning disabilities are likely to be particularly vulnerable to COVID-19. And the data is suggesting that 3 times the level of mortality than the rest of the general population. So some of the priority areas will be around annual health checks and the health actions that are in improving lives. But we're also really keen that we have a focus on taking forward some of the social care actions linked to the local authority recovery plans, that we have a focus on reducing restrictive practice and positive behavioural support, which I know will be of huge importance to the community practice. And then we also have a focus on education and meeting the needs of learning disabled children and young people as they return to education. And we know there's been really significant issues in those areas. So we know that people are reporting increased anxiety and isolation amongst people with learning disabilities and their families. And as a result, equally, that might bring an increased occurrence of challenging behaviour. There's a really strong feeling amongst families and carers and individuals with learning disabilities that their voice has been lost during the pandemic, and that decisions are being made without considering the impact on this group. And some examples would be the issue of kind of key COVID-19 statements and guidance without easy read versions, the move to cashless payments in some instances, and many people with learning disabilities are unable to access debit and credit cards, and some of the remodelling or temporary closure of day services without really involving and working with stakeholders. So what's the next steps for us? Well, discussions have already commenced with the relevant policy leads and colleagues in Improvement Cymru and in Welsh Government to develop a more detailed plan to take forward work to deliver against those kind of broad headlines that I've just talked about. And we will be discussing those with stakeholders in the Ministerial Advisory Group prior to implementation. And I suppose the other kind of key announcement was that the First Minister has announced that he's strengthening the ministerial health team through the appointment of a Minister for Mental Health, Wellbeing in the Welsh language. And that portfolio will include learning disability and autism. And Julie Morgan will continue in her role as Deputy Minister for Health and Social Services. But I do think this is a positive move that we've started briefing the new minister, so there'll be more focus on the work we're doing. So that was all I was going to say very broadly. So I'm happy to pick up any questions, or if anybody wants to ask anything in particular.
There's no questions on the chat, I don't think, specifically yet, Hazel. Are you able to stay with us for a while during the meeting?
Yes, no, I'm going to try and stay as long as I possibly can. I'm really interested in particularly hearing the experiences of delivering challenge behaviour care and services during the pandemic. So I'm going to stay as long as I can.
Great.
If I have to go and there's questions that I haven't been able to answer, we can pick them up and email out to people.
So what we're intending to do is try and save the chat. So if people should know that really, that we'll try and save the chat because it'll give us a good record of the meeting. So please, if there's any questions specific for Hazel or for anybody else, please just ask them on chat, and we'll make sure that Hazel can see them, and I'm sure she'll respond either later or in the future. The other thing I should have said, I'm already a bad chair, is that we are recording the meeting. So I hope that's okay with anybody. If you don't want to be recorded, obviously turn your cameras off, turn your mics off, but hopefully that's not an issue for too many people. So just moving quickly on, because we are against time, perhaps Ruth would like to give us a very brief update about improving lives.
Hello everybody, pnawn da, and thank you to Hazel for the update. So this is going to be a brief update, as you've just heard from Hazel. Our work programme is restarted, and myself, the work stream for me is going to be children and young people. And as you know, if you've logged on earlier, you've met David O'Brien, and he's been looking at specialist service, but we'll be working together along the lifespan, looking at particular things around restrictive practice and positive behaviour support. So that hasn't, that's still very much on our agenda, and are very much the things that we want to be looking at. I was pleased to see somebody from education today on this call, and I hope there's somebody else, quite a few of you, and just to share with you that there is an inquiry into restraints within schools. It's just gone live at the moment from the Equality and Human Rights Commission. It'll be open for 8 weeks, and they are looking at mainstream and special schools around about restrictive practices across Wales and England. And they're also looking for good practice. It's not just about finding places where things aren't going to plan. They're looking for really good practice. And I'm sure across Wales we could share some really good practice around how we positively support children and young people in the schools. So do get in touch if you want to know more, or have a look at the website Equality and Human Rights. But apart from that, it's about watch this space, because the programme has just restarted, as Hazel said, and we look forward to working with you in the future along this. There's just one thing else. We're hoping to set up a community of practice for children and young people as well, so that we can just focus on staff that are working in that particular area as well. So hopefully that we'll learn from today, and that we can set up a separate working together across a community of practice. So thank you. So I'll move you swiftly on to David O'Brien, who will take us to the next exercise.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Just before we move on, Ruth, can I just point out there's some questions for you in the chat box. One of them is from Jennifer, asking if you're collating information on this, if you're collating information for this, please. Joanne's asking, do you have any links to share? Read the inquiry. And Vaughan is asking, would that inquiry be appropriate for residential colleges?
I will put the link in the chat box, and I'll put the email of the inquiry into the chat box as well, so everybody can see it.
Wonderful.
That's okay. Yeah.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dave O'Brien, and I'm a colleague of Ruth's, and I'm leading on the specialist services work stream for learning disabilities in Improvement Cymru. And for the next 40 minutes, we are going to ask you to share, we're going to ask you to listen, and we're going to ask you to explore some of the challenges and some of the good stuff around delivering services to people whose behaviour challenges throughout the COVID pandemic and beyond. And we have kind of really worked to try and find a way that is interactive, that keeps you engaged, and that will allow us to pull out some of the themes. So for the next 40 minutes, what we're going to ask you to do is use a tool called Mentimeter. And there's Tara's going to put a link in the chat box for you. There it is. If you can join menti.com, it literally will open up a browser, and then it will ask you for a code. The code that you can see there is 9542077. So don't jump ahead yet. It'll just put you into a lobby. And what we'd like you to do is open menti.com. So what are we going to do over the next 40 minutes? Tara, could you move the slide along for me, please? So over the last 6 months, for some people and longer for some, Wales has experienced a massive change in the way in which services are delivered across Wales. And that's predominantly because of the COVID outbreak. Throughout those changes, for some people, those changes have been really difficult and haven't been positive at all. And for others, it's given an opportunity for innovation and transformation. And what we want to explore in the next 40 minutes is, what does that feel like and what does that look like, and what's been working well and what's not been working well. What have you enjoyed being able to do more of, and what would you like to see the back of? We also want to kind of pull all this together, and we're going to use word clouds to try and pull some of the conversation together. So we want this to be interactive, and for some of you, you'll be more comfortable with the chat box, and we'll try and keep that engagement, and Ruth's going to keep an eye on that alongside Sue. But for some of you, you should feel comfortable if you want to unmute and actually speak up and actually share your thoughts throughout. So we're going to go through 4 questions. And if I can move the slide on for me. We're going to capture what it's like to go through COVID. And what we want to do is we want to ask you one simple, first 4 questions. The first question is, what have you been doing that you're keen to let go of? So something that you stopped doing during COVID and that you're not keen to see start again. And a good example of that would be travel to non-clinical appointments. For some people, they haven't been traveling and they're quite happy not to see us going back into the car and traveling up and down their counties. The next one we're going to ask you to do is, what have you stopped and you are keen to restart? So what is something that you've stopped doing in your care, in your provision, in your support, that you're keen to see start up again? And a good example of that would be face-to-face visits with people. The next one is, what have you started but plan to stop? So this is something that you've had to start as part of your COVID response, but you're really keen to see the back of it. And a good example of that would be PPE. Another one, and the final one, is, what have you started that you actually think, this has been really good and really positive, and what I'd like to see is this continue beyond the pandemic and beyond isolated services, and perhaps amplify and innovate. So the 4 questions we're hoping will promote some conversations. We want to be able to capture the information at the back of it, and what we want to be able to do then is use this to share some of our practical experiences, but also some of our challenges. So I'm going to invite you to get onto menti.com, and just before we begin, has anybody got any problems getting onto menti.com? Anybody got any challenges at all? So I'm just going to, you go back one, Tara, please. Okay. I'm assuming from the silence that we're all happy with menti.com. Anybody? It's not worked for Rebecca. You're trying to join with Skype link, Rachel. Okay. Okay, so what we'll do for those of you that are really struggling to use menti.com, Tara's going to share her screen. So what she's going to do is she's going to show you what the word clouds are starting to form. And what we'd invite you to do, for those of you that are struggling to use menti.com, is to use the chat box, and we'll capture your input through the chat box. Okay. So without further ado, Tara, are you able to share your screen to allow for Mentimeter? Okay, so if for some of you, you're using that. Yeah, we can use that, Tara. So I'm just mindful on the chat there that some people, if you could just pop the chat up for me as well, Tara. You able to do that? No?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, so some of you are struggling because you're trying to use Skype. Is that correct? If you're using Skype, I suspect that Zoom won't work. What we've realized is that if for some of the NHS organizations, they've had blocks put on Zoom. However, if you use the browser for Zoom, there is some functionality. So we've had a couple of people, I think Ben was one who was struggling, but has been able to get on it through the browser. So I'm going to encourage you to try that. So without further ado, we're going to move to Mentimeter, and then Tara is going to be able to show you what the first question is. So what we're going to invite you to do is just to have a practice at menti.com, is just type in where you're joining us from today. So not necessarily from home, but you know, where in the country are you joining us from today? And you type it into the first box and click submit, and then it pops up. So if you're on Zoom, you'll be able to see the word cloud forming. So the majority of people seem to be coming from Cardiff, Carmarthenshire, Bridgend, Powys, Caerphilly, Harden, Cwmbran, Wrexham, Swansea. So yeah, so you're getting a good feel for it. And we know that 60 people have responded. And just to let you know that today, 79 people are on the call today, which is a really good attendance, given that this is all new for most of us. So thank you. So yeah, we can clearly see that more and more people are able to use Mentimeter. Okay, all of this is new for us, so we're going to keep trying and persevere with Mentimeter. Okay, brilliant, thank you. So 69 people have responded. So I'm assuming that for those people that are struggling, we should know in the chat box that Marina is from Swansea. We've got Margaret from Cardiff. We've got 1+6 hello from Brecon. We've got Andrew from Carnarvon. Wonderful. Thank you all for trying that. I don't know if you can see the Zoom, but you should be able to see what the word cloud does. In the bigger the word, the more people said that word. So that would give us some kind of theme. Okay, so we're going to go to the first question about what you've stopped during COVID around behavioural services and support and care that you don't want to see restart. And the example I gave you was that people have actually enjoyed not having to travel around the county to non-clinical meetings. So this is your opportunity. You can type as many words as you want. There's no limit. We really do want to get a flavour of what it is that you're keen to not restart, something you stopped doing during COVID that you don't want to see happen again. So the biggest one that's jumping out right now is traveling to journeys to meetings. Yeah, so we've got people on the chat box saying travel to meetings. So is anybody comfortable just unmuting and giving us a flavour of what it is about the travel that you're really keen not to see happen again? Any thoughts? Anyone in the chat box?
Hi, David, it's Ruth.
Hi, Ruth.
I wonder if people could also start to focus on the work around, you know, people that we're working with at Behaviours that Challenge, so that we can also think about that kind of work rather than just our own work. I'm just trying to have a focus rather than just the travelling, which we kind of know, but which is important. But is there anything else that people would think about in relation to the people we work with?
So we've got attend meetings. We've got trying to read some of these because it's constantly moving.
David, I think for me, it's not just about traveling to meetings, it's about the time that it saves and that we're able to get more professionals around the table. So instead of having professionals that would need to take 3 hours because of traveling to attend a meeting, we're getting a lot more attendance because they only have to attend for that hour. So they're more able to. So we're getting, from my perspective, more of a multidisciplinary team impact for people, which is hopefully more beneficial to them.
So it isn't something you don't want to stop, and you don't want to restart. It's actually something that you think is a positive. So I think it's a good point, Stacey, and I think it's one that will probably come up in the next question, which is, what have you been doing that you want to see carrying on? But yeah, thank you for that, and I agree. I think whilst it's all about travel, I get the feeling that this isn't actually about travel. This is about how we use our time and about being more efficient. So is there any element, thank you for that, Stacey. Is there any other elements in here relating to the delivery of support to people whose behaviour challenges? Are there any statements that anybody wants to make about something that you've stopped doing that you think actually it hasn't had that much of an impact, and actually I wonder whether we should carry on doing it post-COVID?
I think, David, one of the things that I've noticed now is there's not so many people going in and out of people's houses, as in professionals and visitors and monitoring. And a lot of the guys we support have been a bit calmer because there hasn't been so many people kind of invading their space.
Interesting. Anybody else experiencing that? So one of the comments that was said to me not recently was that we haven't seen the level of distress in people whose packages of care have actually been quite curtailed. And one of the things that they highlighted was that they did see a reduction in behaviours for people who weren't able to fulfil what was a behaviour support plan with a very, very structured time scale about they must go swimming at a certain time, they must go and do this, and they must do that. And what they've discovered is actually it probably wasn't very person-centered to begin with. And what they've discovered is that their behavior, because the demands have reduced on them to go and do things, that their behaviors have reduced by default. So that they were questioning whether some of the active support plans were actually person-centered. Does anybody have a view on that?
Yeah, I think it's with people attending day centres, whereas now people are just, the day centres are just bespoke. People are just attending day centres just to do the activities they prefer to do and like doing, rather than having to be there from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. And most of the days they're disengaged really throughout the day. And now they just pop in and out just to do the things that they enjoy, rather than having to put up with being there all day, every day for 5 days a week.
Yeah, I think that's that. As somebody else has said, Rebecca said, too much expectations on the individuals to achieve community activities and actually spend time at home during more quality activities rather than keeping out commissioning quantity expectations. So there's something in there about how person-centered are some of these behaviour support plans if it's actually creating more demand on people and their behaviours are exacerbated. Has anybody else got any other comments? Jennifer? Yep, Margaret?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you zoomed.
Okay.
It's just that, it's just that rush element that staff had previously of getting things done by 11 o'clock. I think with their own lives, they've realised that the day is a long day and we need to make the most of everything. What we found is staff in work are making the most of that day with people supported. They can exercise, it lasts an hour rather than 10 minutes. There's more patience and tolerance. And when we don't want to return to that, when things go back to normal, we'd want people to have that same approach, really. When they go back to our normal lives of rushing around,
Thank you, Margaret. That's a really good point. Cleo, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think from an inpatient perspective, because a lot of the disciplines have been working from home, our HCA teams have felt much more valued and enriched in their practice. So rather than someone coming to do the job on behalf of them, they've been working alongside behaviour analysts, speech and language therapists to gather the information for people and then feedback those professionals. So people on the ground, so to speak, feel much more valued in their posts, which has been really good to see. There's been some fantastic pieces of work in inpatients through the pandemic. So that's it for me, really.
That's really helpful, Cleo. Thank you. And that might help us with one of the next slides that we go to. So just to pull that together then. So when we ask you, what is it that you've stopped doing in the support and the delivery of care to people whose behaviour challenges that you don't want to see restart? It looks like the majority of you are focused on how you use your time, and the fact that most of your time is predominantly spent travelling, which isn't a good use of your time. So I'm hearing that that is the predominant issue that you don't want to see come back, is that you spend more time travelling than you wish. Okay. We'll be capturing all of these comments and we'll be saving them. And I can see in the chat box, there's lots of conversations going on, and I thank you for that. Can we move forward to the next question? So the next question is, what have you stopped during COVID that you're really keen to start doing again? And again, taking Ruth's point, this is about focusing on support and care and service delivery to people with behaviour that challenges. So clearly face-to-face.
Sorry, Dave, it's Cleo again.
Cleo.
I think from an inpatient perspective, we obviously have people come in at the crisis for assessment treatment. And I think we're all aware of the 2 metre social distance and masks. And I think it's really difficult for us, a nurse perspective, not to give just something as simple as the arm around the shoulder comfort. That's something, you know, as a ward staff, we find exceptionally difficult. And I think it's something we've all really taken for granted. So from our perspective, well, inpatient especially, just that human nature of care that we as LD and nurses do as our bread and butter, really. That's what I'm keen to restart.
Cleo, that sounds like a very, very succinct way of saying that touch and the lack of touch in COVID has been something that you're keen to see start. Are you a hugger?
You know what? No, but I felt it, especially some of the people we've had coming through for various different circumstances, that, you know, reassuring arm around the shoulders does wonders. Something so simple that we're all reluctant to do unless we're full of PPE, which if you're autistic and can't communicate, I bet it look quite scary. So just the simple things would be really nice to see again.
Again, I think that's reflected in some of the comments in the chat box that Margaret, you're mentioning that community activities, being able to physically get closer to people and being able to socially show facial gestures.
And also, you know, everyone knows the frustration when we're out ourselves with our facial masks on, about how you try with your eyes. You can't tell the person you're happy about something or show that. And for people we support, just being able to wear that face mask less, you know, would be great.
So it's something you're keen to see stop, is the use of PPE.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's something you've stopped. So this is about something we've stopped that you're keen to start doing again. And the majority of you, and 76 people have responded to this question, and the majority is face-to-face contact, face-to-face training, supporting staff, and somebody's, I don't know if anybody wants to comment on what team formulations are. Thank you, Margaret, for your comments. Team formulations, anybody? God, there's so many comments.
Hi, it's Vaughan here. Yeah,
Hi, Vaughan.
Team formulations are a really useful process in which you can gather a whole system that may be supporting an individual and maybe use a network training model or some kind of model to talk about that individual and add some psychological theory to what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis for that person. So it's a really nice team knitting kind of exercise.
So again, it's something we've stopped doing during COVID that you want to see restart.
Just because of the bubbles,
Yeah, and I think one of the questions that I'm being asked is you know, some of these things, are they evidence-based as well now? Are we seeing consequences to not being able to do some things? You know, have we seen a consequence of lack of face-to-face contact with people? And I think that's, again, a really good question. But I think Any comments on the chat box, Ruth? Oh, I see, Joanne, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I'm missing that, Joanne. Sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry. I don't want to talk over anyone, and there's lots of us here. I wanted to say about the kind of conversations that you have with people when you're just walking down the corridor and you bump into somebody. Like, they're not something that you'd necessarily pick up the phone about or email about, but I'm really missing that sort of ad hoc communication, particularly in schools, where I might bump into a teacher and they'd be like, oh, I've been meaning to catch up with you, such and such is going on. That kind of stuff isn't really happening anymore, and I feel like we're missing some of the lower level stuff. And when behaviours then escalate, and it comes to a point where they are prioritising wanting your intervention, actually we probably could have nipped stuff in the bud a bit earlier. I'm missing that kind of communication. So
correct me if I'm wrong, Joanne, but are you reflecting on the informality of being in a building together where you have conversations about individuals that allow you to formulate plans, even if it's over a brew? You're missing that part.
Yeah, and even like I haven't been into any schools yet, but even when we do start going back in, it will be a situation where we're able to access one class per visit. We go in, we go to that kind of space, then we leave again. So it's not going to be like I can't bump into a speech therapist or something, for example, because I'm not able to go into the therapist room if I'm going to visit a classroom. And it's those sorts of conversations that I'm really missing.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you for that. Ruth, just quickly, is there anything on the chat box that you want to highlight?
It's about the, I think the conversations people have over coffee as well, you know, those professional support and catch-ups, checking things out with other people, you know, that's kind of things that are missing out. I think it was Jenny saying that some of the meetings now online are a bit more formal and less relaxed than you would if you were around the table and having a chat about things. You know, missing the corridor conversations we've got, that link that people are supporting each other. So yeah, I think that's kind of a missing, you know, the reflective, the time that we do a lot of thinking and reflecting when we have those coffees and conversations in a more relaxed, rather than a focused online as we are now.
Okay. Has anybody else got their hand up? Because I'm struggling to spot that. Does anybody else want to speak before we move on? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Are we happy to move on to the next question? So this is asking you to think about what have you started but planned to stop? So what have you had to do? What have you had to do during COVID that's new, different, that you're not keen to see continue? And the example I gave in the beginning was the use of PPE. So if you can think about this in relation to supporting people, challenge behaviour services, the delivery of good quality behaviour support, I'd like you to think about what other things that you've had to do that are new, that you're keen to see finish and not work. Again, Zoom therapy sessions, good point. PPE. Does anybody want to say anything about this question? Has anybody got any comments? There's lots going on in the chat box.
I think for me, trying to deliver training virtually. So we've been working on, for example, preference assessments, and we're trying to come up with creative ways how we can do it virtually, which is really difficult. So although I've been able to do more training during COVID, it's all been virtually, which is doable but difficult. So I can't wait to be back in person to deliver training.
So just a follow-up question then, Stacey, is do you think that the quality of your training suffers?
Most probably, yeah. It's most probably taking a lot longer. So we're still getting to the end point, but it's a lot more difficult to get fluency doing it virtually. So what would most probably take an hour in person is taking potentially 2+ hours So it is doubling the time to kind of, it's like, so what have you done there? And it's just like, right, hold on, let me just angle my screen and do this. It's interesting, it's different, but yeah, definitely in person.
So,
I definitely prefer that.
So with my analytical head on, my follow-up is anybody doing any work around any of this, around what impact it's having on people? I mean, your example there is, our staff telling you that they feel just as confident going off and delivering the care with the training you're delivering. You know, do they feel like it's impacting on their confidence and their ability?
From the feedback that we've had so far is once they've got to the end, they're happy, but we are having to spend a lot longer on something. So it's just a longer process, but they're still finding at the end of it, they're competent and confident to go ahead with it, but they definitely prefer it in person because it's just different, isn't it? Okay,
thank you, Stacey. I noticed that a couple of comments on there is virtual supervision. I take it this is behavioural support supervisions. So anybody have a view on, want to share? No? Okay, I've got online peer support. I guess this is about making sure the quality of our behaviour support remains at a good enough standard. Has anybody got any views and thoughts on that? Somebody wants to see the COVID guidelines end? No? Okay. What about assessments? Has anybody got any thoughts on having to assess people with learning disability differently, and whether that's something you'd like to see change? Anybody got any experience of that? Trying to keep an eye on the chat box, Ruth. Is there anything coming up?
David, can I just
certainly, Joanne,
say something about what you just said? The assessments that are taking place for us at the moment are all by proxy. So, for example, I did a QABF over video chat with a teacher last week. As for observations, things like that, they've all had to stop because of GDPR. We can't do observations in school anymore in case other children are on the screen and those kinds of things. So there are other implications, particularly that are problematic, I guess, for me, because I'm working with children who are in a school setting, where we can't get them on their own to be able to watch what's happening. And actually having other children in the room is often actually important to the observation anyway.
That's a really good point. And I think I've picked up from talking to people around Wales who deliver behavioural assessments, and one of the things that they've commonly said is that they're really struggling, and they wonder about the quality of their assessment when they can't physically see people necessarily in an environment, particularly now with increasing restrictions. There's a reluctance to spend huge amounts of time in people's homes doing observation work, and actually some of the virtual assessments have been a real challenge, and it's got practitioners questioning the quality of their assessment. Does anybody else have any views on that?
I have a slight linked view to that. I mean, I think we help support a lot of out of county placements in my college, and we're finding, you know, liaising with local authorities in conducting certain Mental Capacity Act assessments or DOLS applications. It just has a feeling that it's not best practice right now, because those social workers aren't able to travel to see the students, to have a direct view about what you know, what their living conditions are and what they're up to and quality of life stuff. So yeah, I think that's been quite a worry for us.
Thank you, Vaughan. I think that's a point, and I've noticed that Peter Davis, you've made a point on chat about actually what this might have done is given people more choice. So some people actually prefer the virtual and some people don't, and actually there is perhaps something that about making the assumption that everybody wants the same thing. I don't know if you want to come in there, Peter. Okay, so moving on. So just to summarize question 4, what is it that we've been doing that's new and different that we're quite keen to see the end of? I think without a resounding PPE is jumping out of the screen. Virtual supervision and virtual training, and I think if I'm honest, virtual anything for most people has been seen as something they're keen to see the end of. Taking Peter's point, I think it does ask the question about perhaps for some people they'd like to see virtual working remain. And I know earlier on we had a conversation about sometimes it's easier to get an MDT together virtually than it would be in real life. So there are some benefits to it, but overall most people are quite keen to see the end of the virtual world. The COVID guidelines, social distancing, and back-to-back meetings. And I think that's a really good point about staff welfare and staff working, because I think with Zoom and virtual meetings, it's very easy to jump from back-to-back meetings and just slot quick things in between meetings because you're not having to travel and not having to go anywhere. So that's a really good point. Virtual assessments, I'm just quickly running through them. Video calls, risk assessments, observational, virtually observing people. Again, these are really good points. Has anybody got anything they want to say? Peter?
David, can I?
Sorry, David, I was just a little bit slow on the mute button there.
That's welcome, Peter.
But just to say, I tend to find that some people are more disengaged over video calls, but others actually engage better, because I think sometimes that physical presence can sometimes be a little bit of a problem for people, and they're a little bit more defensive. It depends on the individual. And I think actually I've found that some therapy sessions have progressed really well since using video calls. Usually that's not the case, but I think it would be lovely to plan my calendar around what people prefer, really, and to not just have this sort of blanket expectation to do one thing in particular. So
I think that's a very good point, and I think that's a point shared by, is it Mariana, who's also saying that some of the assessments that are being asked to be done virtually are very difficult today, so, and can cause a lot more problems. So yeah, thank you, Peter. It's a really good point, and I'm going to move us on to our last question, which is actually the nice question in an enjoyable way. Is what new ways of working in relation to people with behaviour that challenges have you had today that you want to see keep and think has been an absolute essential thing that we should keep doing? Minecraft therapy.
Oh no, I can't believe mine was the first one.
There you go. Now you've got to explain.
Oh, it's just engaging some of our students has been quite difficult to carry on their therapy work, and it's just been quite successful hosting private servers on Minecraft.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I want to carry on.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. Thank you. I thought it was a game.
Oh, it is a game. Yeah. Yeah.
So we've got single points of access. So that seems to be something that people have had to do that they want to see keep. I don't know if anybody wants to share that view. Anybody who wants to add to that?
A couple of the families that I've worked with have found it so much less stressful to attend a virtual call, but rather than actually having to meet someone in person and travel to a destination and make sure they're there on time and they're getting home on time, etc., etc. And also, I think there's something about not being in someone else's house, which I think is easy to forget about. That actually some families find it really stressful when people come and visit their house and they've got to tidy up and they've got to make sure that the house is in an acceptable state for people to come in, and that, you know, by that I mean, you know, high standards of cleanliness, which actually aren't really important to our contact. and it means obviously on Zoom or whatever, you don't actually have to be in somebody's house seeing the things that they don't want you to see. I think that some families find that a lot less stressful.
I think that's a very good point, and I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that, but I think one of the things that has been most evident to me is the accessibility that virtual working provides. Some feedback I had was that in some community learning disability teams, they're really keen to see virtual engagement and virtual clinics and virtual kind of drop-in sessions continue, that people can just jump on a call or book themselves on a call and actually have a virtual conversation that is much more easy to do and much more accessible than waiting for an appointment for your community nurse or your social worker to come out and see you. So that was definitely something that practitioners said, that they, while the virtual world can be a challenge and a nightmare, there is some elements of it that they really want to keep, because it is about improving accessibility.
I think if I could just speak, I think just to raise the voice of young adolescents with a diagnosis of ASD, I've had feedback from them that they find virtual meetings less threatening, and that's been quite consistent feedback I've received.
That's really interesting, Claire, and I wonder if that is reflective of the generations, but certainly whether or not you have anyone else has had any other experiences of positive virtual engagement. Somebody's mentioning FaceTime for families. I can't see.
We've had
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, we've obviously virtual sessions. So say, for example, the person we support steps into a yoga session when normally they wouldn't be able to go to that, even out of COVID sessions, because of to tolerate other people. So we just see it as a bit of a stepping stone. We bought them a bigger TV screen, so they're almost in the room with the person. And it's been quite successful, because they are doing yoga, which was something that was never seen as a possibility before. So it helps staff to see things are possible for people. Do you know what I mean? So for that,
yeah,
good as well. Quizzes, we've done a number of different things so people can connect, because we want people to use social media anyway.
Yeah.
So they become more skilled themselves, and they can see that it's another avenue of keeping contact with people. Not for everything, but
No, that's a very strong sense that what I'm getting out of the word cloud is that there are elements of virtual working that people want to keep. It's about, again, I think taking the point that's been made is some of it seems to be about making sure that people have a choice. And also it's about using virtual working not as a way of perhaps not having to do something, but actually because it benefits an individual, which I think is the point about younger people. Jane Snare, I notice your hands up. Do you want to jump in?
Oh, hi. I was just going to say we've had amazing success, and we're really happy that this has happened, that we've been able to deliver our ASD Incredible Years parenting groups virtually over Teams. We're now coming to the end of 12 weeks worth of sessions, and they've engaged 12 families via that platform across Powys, and it's worked really well, but I don't think we could have envisaged how well it's worked. So for some families, it's given them the opportunity to actually take part in the course with their children there in situ, and being able to apply things with their children there. But some people that perhaps wouldn't be able to access the group otherwise for whatever reason, especially in Powys, then it's given a lot more accessibility, and it's been really successful.
That's fantastic, Jane. I'd love to know a little bit more about that if we can keep in touch after this. I'd be really keen if you want to drop me an email. I'd be quite keen to hear more about what you've experienced. I'm jumping around a little bit, but Diane, you mentioned that during COVID, you've been doing Keep Fit and Dancing sessions with talent contests and quiz. Do you want to tell us what that was?
Yeah, well, we've been doing them 3 times a week. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we've been doing them 3 times a week, and people from a wider area have been able to join in. We've been getting up to about 35 people on each session, and people have been able to, you know, make new acquaintances, and people who perhaps were reluctant to join in, you know, and it's been in a venue, have been joining in and developing the fitness and doing quizzes. So yeah, it's been really, really positive.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks. I'm mindful that time's moving us on, and we're nearly at 2 o'clock, where we are at 2 o'clock. I think just before we move on to come out of Mentimeter, I think one of the things that I'm seeing both in the chat box and on the word cloud is that one of the things that COVID might have done by default is it's forced us to work and think flexibly and differently. And in some ways, it's accelerated innovation, possibly testing out lots of new ways of doing things in a very short space of time and working out more what doesn't work than what does work. But I'm really interested in if anybody wants to kind of jump in about this concept that it's actually created a more flexible workforce and a more flexible service to people. Does anybody wish to add to that?
Hi, David, it's Ruth. I think,
hey, Ruth.
Was it Owain in the chat box was talking about the implementing behaviour interventions ourselves, that they had to involve more support staff. Because you're virtually having to organise that, so you're talking to the support staff as well. So different ways of getting people to do interventions. I don't know if Owain wants to say a bit more about that.
It was just basically to pick up on the fact that rather than disseminating behavioural interventions to people and to support staff, we're sort of implementing those through support staff instead. So those support staff are much more involved in the intervention, and as a result, they're able to have the opportunity to ask questions about the intervention, to really get a good understanding of it, and therefore implement it with a lot more integrity as well.
And on that note, is anybody doing any work to kind of write any of this innovation up? Is anybody doing anything to capture the experiences? Not just for you, Owain, but for anybody across behaviour services support?
Build have tried to survey to sort of find out more, and perhaps we might repeat that survey, because it has been an interesting response in that we've seen some reductions in some places in incidents. And reports of people being happier, less anxious, but we've also seen some increases in the use of medication around behaviour, and obviously that's something we need to think more about, but it's very yes, I mean, since we are trying to capture as much as we can.
Thank you, Edwin. I'm just noticing on the chat box that we've got comments about people are trying to write some of this up, trying to capture some of the experiences, using collective positive stories and involving service users in that. So that's really positive. I've run out of time. I think I could quite happily keep going, but thank you very much. We're going to keep all these word clouds, and we're going to share this with you as part of the feedback to the COP. But I really am grateful to you for sharing, and I hope that you've all taken something away from this, even though it was only 40 minutes. I hope that you get to think also, more importantly, how to use other technologies like Mentimeter to engage virtually. So next time we'll do something that involves you sticking Post-its on a virtual board. So we'll try another technique next time. But thank you all very much for your patience and letting me practice on you. And I'm going to hand you back briefly to Edwin.
Yeah, thanks, David. That worked much better than I feared when we did some of the rehearsals. No, that was very good. You did a very good job there. And thanks to the participants, because some of those points on chat were really interesting and excellent. And there are contradictions, aren't there? I think that's helped a lot. So I think you can stop. Perhaps Tara could stop sharing the Mentimeter screen now. We're not going to use Mentimeter going forward. We're going to use chat again. I feel like it's the Starship Enterprise sometimes. I get beamed up here and there, so bear with me, but that was excellent. So thanks again. So what we're going to do now, a little brief and unrehearsed, is we're going to invite anybody to give us just an update about important things that have happened in their area. I've had some conversations with colleagues in North Wales about the North Wales COP and an update about that. But really anybody is welcome just to tell us now. So you can switch on your camera, switch on your mic, and just if you want to give us an update about anything you feel is significant and important, the floor is over to you.
Do you want me to start, Edwin?
I
Steve?
do, Steve, yeah.
Oh, thanks very much. Just trying to get all this tech working. It's been a bad day.
Yeah.
So North Wales, where are we up to? I think Catherine's around somewhere and a few other colleagues. We obviously have the North Wales Transformation Programme still in place and active, and has continued to be active even during COVID, with a smaller team in place while some of us went back to frontline services. But we're all back up and running now. Some of the work I've been doing in particular around commissioning, we've nearly, and Edwin will be pleased about this, nearly got sign off on a section 33 in North Wales. It's been through a number of legal departments and barristers, and they're all happy with it at the moment. It's currently sitting with our health board in North Wales, and with any luck, fingers crossed, well, cross everything, they'll be signing that off in the next couple of months, which will be a huge undertaking for us so far.
Can I just ask, Steve?
Yeah.
Who's the sections? That would be historic if you managed to.
I know.
I mean, allegedly it's been possible under Welsh policy for 30 years, but it's never quite happened.
Yeah.
So, really good news. Between who is the agreement then?
So the agreement will be between Betsy, BCUHB and Ynys Môn, Isle of Anglesey, and it will cover their learning disability supported living services. And we've tried to keep it as broad as possible so it encompasses everybody with LD in Anglesey. It will be a pooled fund budget for everybody who is jointly funded between health and the Isle of Anglesey. So it's taken probably about 18 months so far to get that far, and it is quite a big robust document with a lot of appendices and schedules and things, so it is looking really good. Obviously because of COVID it's knocked us back a little bit, and I've got a meeting this week with colleagues around potentially getting that to start off from the new financial year from the 1st of April 2021, which would be fantastic if that can happen. Other work is we're looking at a regional, so the Welsh Government have now said they're going to or try and put in more funding for the next 12 months for transformational work. So we've had to put business cases in for all of our work streams to try and get more money, I suppose, to do another 12 months. And we're looking at a couple of projects in particular for the my work stream. One would be a regional accommodation manager who would look at all of the complex people within North Wales and try and group them to people and then look at what is the best support systems or services or models, and obviously been following the National Commissioning guidance around that, and maybe grouping people in sub-regional properties. And obviously in Wales got huge issues around ordinary residence legislation, but we've managed to get some legal guidance on that as well by putting, well, what would happen is Part 9 agreements between different authorities and health on how that would work. So that's moving forward as well. What else are we doing? Do PBS coordinator we're looking at across North Wales, and how we can push out PBS and active support training. And then we've also got the North Wales Active Support Community of Practice, which a number of colleagues are on here today, which we're going to do our first online event on the 30th of November, which I'm still petrified about because my IT has just been terrible for the past 2 days. It keeps going off. I'm losing everything. And I'm just like, this is never going to work. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully we've got Christine Rose, who's going to do some stuff around practice leadership. And fingers crossed, Kathy Lowe as well, if I need to send her a box of chocolates. And some colleagues in North Wales have done work around PBS and active support as well. So I'm really looking forward to that in the next couple of months.
Well, da iawn, boys a gogledd, a merched a gogledd. Da iawn, that's really good. So well done, the North Walians. I think we'd be really interested in getting updates about that going forward, Steve, obviously, particularly those posts you talked about as well, and like whether, you know, having a model. I noticed David on the chat said that they had a Section 33 in Wrexham for about 6 years, which worked well. So the more sort of models and formats we can develop, you know, to give to as good practice to other areas, it's excellent. We've still got some time, so anybody else? I'm sorry this is so unstructured, but you know the way I chair. So anybody else want to give a quick update?
Yes, Ed.
Yes. Oh, hello, Simon.
Hi, Ed. Just a point of interest and maybe a heads up for some people. The National Institute of Health Research are funding a UK-wide research into the effects of COVID and lockdown on the lives of people with a learning disability. So in Wales, that has been conducted by the University of South Wales and Cardiff University, partnering up with ourselves and All Wales Forum and All Wales People First. So we are imminently going to go live, looking for expressions of interest for people who want to contribute to that. As a group of professionals, it would either be finding people who want to talk about their own experiences, or maybe where there are issues of capacity or consent that enable to support somebody to complete the surveys as part of that research. There's going to be 3 waves of people being contacted at 3 points over the next 12 months. So it's really tight timescales. It's all got to happen in 12 months' time, but we're about to go out with expressions of interest for anyone who wants to be kept up to date and help secure people for that research study. So if it's all right with you, Ed, could I ask you to spread the information about that when it comes out?
Of course, Simon. So I must, Simon needs no introduction from me, but I thought I'd just better mention he's Simon from Learning Disability Wales. So that's the organisation he's referring to, and we'd be more than happy to do that, Simon. You can put things in the chat if you want.
Yeah, I think it's particularly important that we are getting the views of people who maybe have more severe and profound disabilities, because it's, you know, we know that group of people rarely get their voice heard. So I think this group would be brilliant to make sure that those voices are heard.
We'll endeavour to do that. David?
Thank you.
Edwin, I just wanted to mention something that you and I have discussed about restarting the Task and Finish group around looking at PBS workforce and training.
Yeah.
We're really keen to have a framework for all organisations in Wales that has a standard of training and investment in workforce around PBS. I just wondered if, you know, this is the audience that we want to engage with around such a Task and Finish group, but it's just to let you know that that's something that you and I will be working on in the next 6 months.
Yeah, we'll be back in touch with you hopefully quite soon around that, because one of the advantages of the online stuff is perhaps we can engage you a bit better in that work. So we did have one actual face-to-face meeting in Welsh Government just before lockdown, but I think that's a priority for me to start anyway. Thanks for reminding me, David. Yeah. Anybody else? Just unmute and turn your camera on and say anything you want.
Edwin, there's a question from Jennifer around about what they were saying in North Wales about the PBS coordinator in South Wales. They're asking if there was one in South Wales, and
If there
does
was-
the PBS coordinator include children and young people?
I'm going to go on mute. My dogs are being very naughty. So does Simon, Steve want to come back and answer that?
Hi, Ruth. So what we've done, because the transformation money at the moment, Welsh Government are looking to extend that till 2022. So we've had to put business cases in for this money, which we're, fingers crossed, going to get. We'll find out next month whether we've had that. But one of the bids was around a PBS coordinator, and that is all encompassing. That's not just for adult services, because what we've certainly know and identified, that PBS is so important for younger people moving through transition into adult services. If we can embed that there, then we've got better chance of success for people later on. So that's what that coordinator post is about.
Is there a similar post in South Wales or across?
I don't think.
No,
to my recollection, I don't think that post exists anywhere, to be honest with you.
There's not a regional one. Some of our social care partner organisations have, I think, similar posts, either in post now. I don't know if they want to talk about that or thinking about it. Have you got a job description for that post, Steve? And is that something you could share? Not now, but in the future, I think people might.
We've started to sketch something together. It's not complete at the moment, and the number of posts we've got sort of sketched out job descriptions, what they will look like, because they're brand new ideas, you know, and they're regional posts as well. So at the moment we're trying to figure out where that would sit, because we're currently sponsored by Flintshire County Council, but obviously these other posts could sit anywhere across North Wales depending on how the funding goes. So I don't know if Catherine's around, if she can explain any more of that.
Well, I think we're going to get you to do a presentation in the next COP. This is like, you know, that's news for you. I volunteered, even Catherine, I think.
It's all ready to go, yeah.
Hi, it's Linda Hawkins here from Ysgol Penmaes.
Hiya.
Just on the back of that, if I'm a teen teach trainer, and obviously the model is 95% de-escalation, and I do a lot of work within a whole school positive behaviour support framework. But we do, or should I say, I haven't yet, but we are able to go out to other service providers to provide training. So I'd be more than happy if anybody in South Powys wanted any training of that sort. You wouldn't, you know, have to have the physical training if you didn't want it. If you just wanted the PBS, the de-escalation part of Team Teach, I would be more than happy to liaise with anybody who might want some training in that.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Linda. That's very kind. That's how things work, really, isn't it? A small network of people helping each other. We're very conscious about the disparity of service provision and population across Wales, and we are the All Wales community of practice. So I'm sure people will be interested in that and welcome it. I just noticed my old friend Jane Snell, I haven't seen for far too long, is asking where we are in regard to PBS and parent training. Ruth, dydych chi'n moyn ateb hwnna? Ar gyfer
yeah. It's under the kind of other business, but we are, it's a proposal to put a package together to get families PBS ready, to give them frequently asked questions, to give them information around sibling support, around PBS. And we're at the moment going out to tender for the different bits of it to put together. And hopefully we're aiming for it to be out in March of next year as a pack. Hopefully, Edwin, before he retires.
Yeah, no pressure. So
no
again,
pressure.
So Jane and colleagues who have always campaigned, you know, for more focus on children, we'd welcome some of your involvement in that. We just need to do a little bit more of a plan, and I'm sure we'll be in touch on that. So there will be a resource funded by Public Health Wales available in April. and if you help us, the resource will be even better. Anybody else with updates then from organisations, regions, anything? We've got a few more minutes left. No? Anybody? So Jennifer McElwee just asked on that subject about EPATS, which is a approach, which is PBS for families with young children, basically, and a very good model, I think. So yeah, we will be thinking about the EPATS as part of that, but we still want to see. I know that some regions now were just about to start EPATS, so an update from any of those next time would be great.
Hello, Edwin. I don't know if it's helpful. I work in early intervention in Cardiff and the Vale. Our manager has just started a programme of EPATS.
Great.
It's very early days, but I'm sure she'll be able to feedback next time.
That's so helpful. Sorry, I can't see your name.
Sorry, my name's Claire George.
Thank you, Claire. No, I've seen you in the chat. That's excellent. No, we'd welcome that. If you have a chat to whoever's the best person, we'd be very grateful. Okay, that doesn't sound like a great clamour. You're probably getting exhausted of Zoom and want to go and have a cup of coffee. So that's fine. Any more questions? We can still try and ask. Ruth has shared information about the survey from the Human Rights Commission on the chat, just for anybody. If you've missed that, just scroll back. But we will make all these links available after the meeting. I won't do that. I hope Tara is much better at it than me, and they'll go on the website or something logical, okay? So as we close then, I just feel like saying how nice it is to see you, even if it's only virtually. We're a really strong group, and let's continue to be a really strong group. So we put out for expressions of interest recently, because I do think it's time for me to hand over to somebody younger, especially as I just turned 60, and to keep this COP going, and for somebody to come and do things, perhaps keep the good things, but do things a bit differently as well. So it's time for somebody younger, somebody better, and somebody who's got lots of energy. So I'm really pleased to announce that the person who's going to take over as chair of the COP is Paula Hopes, who's our learning disability nurse consultant in Swansea Bay. But Paula has a number of roles, which I'm sure she'll talk about. The best thing for me is, although she's just a young thing, really, she's had a great deal of experience at many different levels, really. So she's worked in behavioural support teams, she's worked with children, she's worked with adults. She's really clear about the importance of social care, because our group is really strong, because we're across sectors, and we're not, you know, another simple health group, which delights me a lot, because our social care partners are really so important in this, and we're all equal at the COP. So I don't know if Paula's online, whether she wants to introduce herself, and you've got a few minutes, which I'm sure you're a bit embarrassed about, Paula. to
Made me go all red. Yeah, so hi everyone. Lots of people will know me already. I've loved being part of the COP in my time that I've been in Wales, and I'm definitely not better. I might be younger than Edwin, but I think that Edwin's done a marvellous job, a fantastic job over the years of making this a really cohesive network of people who bring so much to improving the lives of people with learning disabilities, to developing all of our knowledge around positive behaviour support and reducing restrictive practice. So it's a massive pair of shoes that I've got to fill, and I'm really pleased that I've got this opportunity, and I look forward to working with you all together in the future. So thank you.
Thanks, Paula. I'm only size 8. I think that, you know, what we'll do now is Paula and the team from Improving Lives and I They'll just work through hopefully a seamless induction, not that she needs a lot. And then Paula can really take things forward then in the future. I'll still be around. I'm still going to come to COP meetings, and I'll still be trying to support COP members really, but just doing it in slightly different ways really. I've got to say, because I'm not going to go to cry now, because I'm still going to be around. I'm not going anywhere really. But it's been such a success, the community of practice. And like I said, you've inspired now other community of practices to be established. There's lots of interest. And the whole point of the community of practice, it's only as good as the membership. And you've, you know, some of you have been with us from the start on this. And you've just made it so good really. So it's a lot of work sometimes just organizing meetings, but it's been such a pleasure for me, and you've educated me you know, such a lot about that. So we haven't as yet got a date for the next community of practice. I think we're looking at a virtual one, to be honest, just because the way we have to plan these, we can't under regulation plan a face-to-face until we're clear that the face-to-face can happen. So I don't know if people want to comment when roughly they'd like the next meeting on the chat box, that would help us. This is cheap now. Before we were rather constrained by a budget, but the budget has been sorted and is now, the COP budget is now part of the funding given to Public Health Wales. So in a way, we could do a series of brief meetings like this. We don't have to stick to once a quarter. So if you want to just enter into chat, then please do so really. When would you like to meet again? Would sort of 6 weeks, or certainly before Christmas, I was thinking. Perhaps we should do that, and then again in the new year. But we'll let you know. The other advantage, of course, is you can join us from wherever you are in the world. And I think other people are thinking about retiring and moving about, so I particularly want us to stay connected, really. I haven't really got a lot more to add. I'm just delighted about the way the COP's going to continue, and how we've actually, if you remember, we used to have to do things on a shoestring, and I used to have to beg social care providers for money to keep going at 1 or 2 stages. And I'm just so pleased that they were very supportive at that time, and I'm grateful we don't have to beg so much anymore. So if you want to continue, I'm going to have to go personally, but if you want to continue to have conversations now after we finish that, you're very welcome, particularly if you're new to the COP, you want to ask questions, you want to get to know people, then please do that. This is I think the biggest attendance we've ever had at a COP meeting. So that tells me something about the value of online. And I think what I got from our chat was what we want to return to, like a blended, using online when online's better and more effective, using face-to-face as soon as the restrictions allow us, really. So, diolch yn fawr iawn, and we'll see each other again soon, yeah? But I'll probably leave now and let other people who want to carry on.
Thanks, Edwin. We'll be staying on Zoom for the next 30 minutes. If anybody wants to have a conversation, feel free.
And
I'm really keen.
A big thank you to the team in Improving Lives, to Tara, because doing all this organising isn't easy. It looks easy now, but it was a nightmare, and it's worked very, very well. Congratulations to you all. See you before too long, yeah? Ta-ra.
Ta-ra.
Well, Edwin.
Are you staying on the call, Ruth?
Yeah, I'm going to be here if anybody wants to say hello.
So me and Ruth are both from